So a few weeks ago, we checked out the Partybox 310 and the Partybox on the go. And overall, I really like the Partybox 310 because it has some significant upgrades over the Partybox 300. Whereas with the Partybox on the go, I'm not the biggest fan. But I thought, hey, let's give the Partybox 100 some love. And overall, yeah, this guy is pretty solid. And I'm really looking forward to the Partybox 110 now. Regarding pricing, the Partybox 100 has a retail price of $350, but it can routinely be found on sale these days for $280, which is a solid deal. Now, this party box has been out for almost 2 years now, and given that the 310 has already come out, I wouldn't be surprised if the party box 110 comes out sometime in 2021. Now, I'll discuss what I expect to see from the party box 110 later on in this video, but for now, if you're going to pick the party box 100 up, it'll be linked down below. Now, first let's talk about the design of this speaker. The Partybox 100 is basically just a shrunken down version of the Partybox 310 or Partybox 300, and we have a mostly plastic body and grille on the front. Now, when it comes to portability, the speaker has two built-in carrying handles and it weighs in at 21.5 pounds. So taking the speaker on the go with you isn't too bad if you want to take it to either different places around the house or friend's house or maybe even the park. Now, from a durability standpoint, yeah, the Partybox is using rather stiff plastics, so it can definitely take a beating, but it is going to collect way more scratches than, let's say, your boombox, which has a mostly fabric body. But more importantly, when it comes to water resistance, the Partybox 100 is not IPX4 water resistant, like either the Partybox 310 or the Partybox on the go. Now, that's primarily because the ports on the back are fully exposed on the Partybox 100, whereas on the Partybox 310, they're sealed off. Now, I wouldn't be too worried if the Partybox 100 gets caught out in a slight drizzle, and it does happen, but what you definitely don't want to happen is to get the ports fully drenched. And this is the first major upgrade that I would expect to see from the Partybox 110 when it comes out. I think JBL will seal off the ports on the 110 like they did to the 310 so that they can make the 110 at least IPX4 water resistant. Now, as to if JBL will add wheels and a retractable handle to the 110, I hope they do. Now, even though it is easy to carry around the Partybox 100, just having wheels would make it even easier to take it on the go with you. Because even though the Partybox on the go does have that shoulder strap, trying to lug around the Partybox on the go on your shoulder just isn't as convenient as just having a pair of wheels. So definitely, I do want to see the 110 get wheels. But now let's talk about the light feature on this speaker. JBL makes a pretty mean looking light feature. Now, there are a few different lighting modes to choose from, but keep in mind you can only cycle between these light features by pressing the light mode button on the speaker. Unlike the Partybox 310, the 100 doesn't connect to JBL's Partybox app. So first off, you're not going to be able to remotely control this light feature. You're also not going to have as many lighting modes to choose from, and you're also not going to be able to customize this light feature. Nonetheless, the light feature on the Partybox 100 is pretty impressive, but I would expect to see app support on the future Partybox 110. But now let's talk about tech specs. The Partybox 100 has an advertised battery life of 12 hours, but that's with the speaker playing at 50% volume, with his light feature turned off, and with his bass boost feature turned off as well. And quite frankly, battery life on the speaker really varies depending on how you use it. Now, this speaker sounds fine with his bass boost feature turned off, but it does sound very flat. Now, the bass boost feature on this speaker has two levels to it. Now, personally, I just like how this speaker sounds while in bass boost level 1. It sounds very balanced with a good kick to it. But if you want to get the walls shaking, then you can crank the speaker up to bass boost level 2 and place it up against the wall. But just keep in mind, bass boost level 2 is going to drain your battery faster than bass boost level 1. Now, with all that being said, real-world use with the speaker playing at 80% volume with this light feature turned on and while in bass boost level 1, its battery life is good for around 5, maybe 6 hours of playback time, which is not bad at all, just given the amount of sheer bass this speaker is pumping out and just how loud it gets. Now, when it comes to connectivity, the Partybox 100 is using Bluetooth 4.2. But more importantly, it can be connected to 2 devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ, and this speaker does have zero latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And when it comes to audio codecs, the speaker is using both SBC and AAC. And if we were to look at the ports panel on the back, you're going to see that there's a mic and a guitar input, and you can play around with the gain by adjusting the knobs. Now, you can always go ahead and add an echo to this microphone by pressing and holding the bass boost button and the volume up button. So right now, this is echo level 1. This is echo level 2. And this is the echo off. Now, personally, I wouldn't really bother adding an echo to the microphone on this, but, you know, to each his own. Now, the Partybox 100 also has a USB-A port, so you can actually play music off of a USB drive. But you can also use this USB-A port to charge your own devices. Now, this USB-A port isn't going to fast charge your devices like those new 20-watt power breaks, but at least it's something. But personally, I hope that with the Partybox 110, JBL also decides to throw in a USB-C port, because a lot of phones these days are starting to come included with USB-C cables instead of USB-A cables. But don't get me wrong, I still want JBL to have a USB-A port on the Partybox 110 so that you can play music off of a USB drive. Now, next to the USB-A port, you'll find your audio in and audio out jack. Now, if you want to use a wired connection with the Partybox, you can just use the audio in jack. That's pretty straightforward. But thanks to the audio out jack, you can daisy chain any speaker to the Partybox and have them play in sync. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with this speaker. Regarding speaker setups, the Partybox 100 has dual front-wood firing woofers with an exhaust port shooting out the back and dual front-wood firing tweeters up top. Now, when it comes to output, the Partybox 100 has an advertised output of 160 watts, but that's when the speaker is plugged in. When it's running off of its internal battery, the Partybox 100 has an output of 100 watts. So if you want to get the most out of the speaker, then you'll want to use it while it's plugged in. When it's plugged in, the speaker will get louder and its bass will punch harder. But while it's running off of its internal battery, the Partybox 100 still gets impressively loud and has more than enough bass to make most people happy. Now, we're going to be jumping into a sound test. The Partybox is going to be playing off of its internal battery with its bass boost feature turned off and with its bass boost feature set to level 1. And I'm also going to be throwing in the original boombox for comparison. But it's going to be playing while it's plugged in, because just like the Partybox, the boombox also gets a performance bump when it's plugged in.
Heaven just knows what it was. Will I go back to the place where I belong? Everyone could break my heart, but I try my best to not fall apart. And I find it hard to let go. The memories keep me together. Gotta fight till the end, no pressure, no pressure. And I find it hard to say no to the ones who want something better, to the ones who never say never. You'll be my pleasure. I got nothing to be scared of, because where people live, there is always love. I know the answers in my heart, so I'll try my best to not fall apart. And And I find it hard to let go. The memories keep me together. Gotta fight till the end, no pressure, no pressure. And I find it hard to say no to the ones who want something better, to the ones who never say never. Will you be my pleasure? I know the answers in my And I find it hard to let go. Memories keep me together. Gotta fight till the end, no pressure, no pressure. And I find it hard to say no to the ones who want something better, to the ones who never say never. Will you be my pleasure?
So, like you may have just heard, the Partybox sounds very flat when it has its bass boost feature turned off, but with its bass boost feature turned on, I think the Partybox sounds great. Specifically, it sounds very balanced. Vocalists are well pronounced, there's a good kick to the bass, and the speaker sounds fairly open. Whereas if we were to look at the boombox does sound a little brighter than the Partybox, and it does sound a little more narrow. Now, like I mentioned in the past, the thing about both the Boombox and Boombox 2 is that once you start increasing their volume past 80%, really only the mids and highs get increased, but the bass stays the same. So at higher volumes, both boomboxes do start to sound nasally. Whereas with the Partybox, it does a much better job of linearly increasing its bass as you increase its volume. So the Partybox continues to sound balanced even at those higher volumes. The only thing to keep in mind here is that JBL still doesn't allow you to directly customize the EQ on their speakers like you can with other speakers. But personally, I don't mind it because I think the Partybox sounds just fine while it's in bass boost level 1. But if you want more bass, then you can always just crank it up to bass boost level 2 and place it up against a wall. So overall, I really don't have any complaints about the sound quality of the Partybox 100. It sounds balanced, it gets decently loud, and it has an ample amount of bass for its size. But looking forward to the Partybox 110, I do expect the 110 to get a little louder, have a little bit more bass, and sound a little more open than the Partybox 100. Because these are the sound quality improvements that we saw when we compared the Partybox 300 to the Partybox 310. But now let's talk about pairing this speaker up with other speakers. Now you can wirelessly sync up one Partybox 100 to one other Partybox 100 and get them playing in left and right stereo. But unfortunately, you cannot wirelessly sync up a Partybox 100 to any other Partyboxes. So for example, let's say you got a Partybox 310 and a Partybox 100, you're not going to be able to wirelessly sync them up. You're going to have to daisy chain them. And also keep in mind, you can't wirelessly sync up any Partyboxes to any of JBL's other speakers that are either using Party Boost or JBL Connect Plus. So even though JBL does wirelessly pairing very well, unfortunately you can't mix and match speakers from completely different lineups. So definitely do look out for that fragmentation. But with all that being said, I'm not mad at the Partybox 100. I'm actually more mad that it took me so long to cover this speaker. Sound quality wise, the Partybox 100 sounds well balanced while in bass boost level 1. With well defined vocals, a good kick to its bass, it sounds fairly open and it gets decently loud. And if you want to get more out of this speaker, you can always use it while it's plugged in. The real-world battery life on this speaker is decent, but keep in mind it really depends on how you use this speaker. Having bass boost level 2 and the light feature on this speaker turned on, is going to take its toll on the battery life. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.